Well, if you go to the dictionary and you look up the word perseverance, my next guest's 8 by 10 full color glossy photo would be prominently displayed there because that's basically what Conor Daly has had to do since he tried to chase his goal to go full time and be a superstar in the NTT IndyCar Series. And through a series of late off-season events, he may be right on the brink of it. He joins me now here inside the wind tunnel. Conor, it's been an up and down off-season for you when you learned late that the U.S. Air Force was going to go in a different sponsorship direction. You put together what you'd hope would land you, even if it was like in previous seasons, a ride here and a ride there. And yet you got near the end of the off season and nothing had come to fruition. And enter Todd Ault and Bitnile. Boy, the way things can turn on a dime. Congratulations.
Thank you. No, I mean, you're right. It's, this sport is really interesting. I think a lot of people, don't really realize it, but you're always one day away from, your life changing entirely. Right. So, these things can happen. I mean, I've talked to countless people over the years who you think that's your guy. Like that's your key to getting in the right place for your career. My very first contract I signed when I was like 15, 16 was with Jerry Forsyth for 10 years as like an investor. And I was like, well, I think this is it. Like, this is what I need. But after a year, 2 years after we won all the Road to Indy championships, he's like, you know what, that's all I wanted to do. And then that's it. So, your life is always in racing, sometimes it's not really up to you. I mean, if winning is always helps everything. But, Tony Kanaan was an IndyCar champion and lost his ride, you know what I mean? And he had to fight back in the early, 2011, 2012, 13-ish era before he won the 500. Same with Graham Rahal too. I remember him, we go when the Newman Haas team shut down and when they went to, when there was a lot of IndyCar coming back together, Graham even had to fight to get back in. And we all, basically you can't think of IndyCar without those two guys' names and they're successful. So, it's a really interesting journey. It's been a wild last few months. But, to have Todd come on board, someone who really, truly loves IndyCar racing, and also a very savvy and smart businessman, it's a great combination.
Yeah, but that tumultuous offseason was not the first for you in your career. A lot of your fans probably don't even realize that there was a point in time where just to enter your beloved Indianapolis 500, you took out a 6-figure loan and agreed to drive for zero. I mean, that takes dedication and, as I said at the outset, perseverance. How can a sports athlete take those sorts of gambles and then go out there and perform at 100%?
Well, we obviously wish our sport was in a position where we didn't have to do that, but sadly, that is just what it is sometimes. And it's kind of like betting on yourself. And it worked out for me, that year alone, creating that opportunity at the Indy 500. That first step to getting back into the game really created where I'm at now, many, many years later now. So, it created a 4-year relationship with the U.S. Air Force. It created, that springboard to go from U.S. Air Force to now Bitnile. So, that you gotta make the choices when you can. And it's always better to be in the car than not. And that's how it was.
Well, since your tour full time with AJ Foyt back, what was it, 2017, you've kind of cobbled together, for the most part, full seasons, switching back and forth between Ed Carpenter Racing and Carlin Racing. So I wonder, Conor, now that you've got this full-time ride, a 2-year deal, having those experiences and having to integrate flexibility working between two different organizations, how has that made you a better driver now that you get to deal with one group of people from the beginning of the season all the way to the finale?
Well, I think it just certainly makes it less awkward right out the gate. You know what I mean? When you're trying to go from, one locker room to another, you don't necessarily see LeBron James playing for the Lakers and then going to play for the Clippers the next day. You know what I mean? Like it's It's a very, very different, scene, and everyone likes to keep their information pretty close. So it's just nice to finally focus on, one group. And, we still have a lot to learn together ourselves as a team, me and ECR. And, there are tracks like Toronto now this year that we haven't been to yet still as a team. Last year, there were a couple of places that we just went to for the first time. And again, this year, there's going to be places that we're going to go to for the first time together. Texas, Iowa, Gateway, stuff like that. So there's a lot of exciting things ahead for us, a lot of opportunities that are going to be new and hopefully quite successful for us.
When you look at your career, has it been worth it?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I love IndyCar racing. I think there's a lot of times where I wish that, your things had gone differently or things I had done differently. But I mean, I can't picture myself not in IndyCar racing, and I love this sport. I wish, everyone has their own ways they wish things would have worked out, or things that you're very, very close to have happening. And certain doors opening and closing. But yeah, I mean, very happy to be here now. I think as a driver, it's an interesting era to be involved in IndyCar, and obviously a very, very competitive one.
Yeah, let's talk about that competitiveness. It's not that many years ago when you first started pursuing your passion and your dream, where it was a handful of drivers at the very top, and the gap between them and the rest of the field, well, it was pretty steep. You can't say that anymore. Just look at the finish in the first race at St. Pete, and I see no reason why we should project 2022 to be anything less than uber competitive, and more competitive than probably the most competitive season 1 year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive to see. I think the only sad part about it right now is the fact that I think our cars, in the era of like 2016 and 17 with the Aero, because I think they raced really well. And I think even 2019, the cars raced really well before the Aero screen. And, obviously we're not allowed to say anything bad about the Aero screen, and it's great. It's done a lot of great things, and we have to give it the credit where it's due. It's very safe. That's great. We all like that, and that's important. But like right now, it's definitely tougher to race with the cars. And I think everyone's working towards getting us the ability to, go wheel to wheel a lot more often again with each other. And we, obviously have to thank the people that are doing that. Because yeah, right now it's super competitive, but it's almost kind of come down to a lot about qualifying. There's a couple guys that strategize their way up there for sure. And there's always a strategy side of IndyCar. But yeah, qualifying is of maximum importance right now. And you don't see the guys going from P last to P first, you know what I mean, as much anymore. So, I think it's a great era to be involved in IndyCar. I'm very excited for the new era as well, the new engine, new car, hopefully. That would also be, I think, the next step that everyone's excited for. But we got 26 full-time cars, which is an incredible number, incredibly competitive teams, and and a great series to be involved in.
Connor, the way you grew up, you can't help but have been a student of the world of motorsports, and specifically the IndyCar Series. Your dad, after a great career in Formula One, tackled the IndyCar Series back when there were 60, 70 cars trying to make it in the Indy 500. You've had his knowledge to share with you as you've traveled up the ladder. We know about your stepdad, and let's face it, your mom, born and raised there, a former Indy 500 princess. The Daly family is just consumed with IndyCar racing. Being a student of the history, as you've just shared with us, how has that made you a better driver? Has it in any way?
Well, I think having the support of the family is always awesome. Having mom at the track all the time is very, very supportive, because obviously I can do nothing wrong in her eyes. So that's great. But yeah, I mean, my dad was at St. Pete, which was great. And, had a lot of the Irish family over for the first time in a very, very long time as well, which was really cool to see them. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know if it, makes me a better driver these days, but it's people that you can talk to, my stepdad, dad, mom, everyone involved really are racing experienced folk. You know what I mean? So that's quite helpful.
And I understand you talked in reference to the fact that the Irish side of the Daly family got to watch you race. You're not the only star athlete in the Irish side of the Daly family. Got an Olympian too, don't you now?
Yes, yeah, Nikki Daly. She was down at St. Petersburg as well with us. But yeah, she was in the Olympics last year for Team Ireland playing field hockey, which is really, really cool. I mean, I think that's, it's so impressive to go to the Olympics, right? It's such an elite group of human beings, and very, very cool to have someone in the family who is able to do that and represent for her country. I think that's awesome.
I've got to ask you before we say goodbye. 1 year ago, the Indianapolis 500. I mean, you were out front. You were smoking the rest of the field at 33. And then a tire, after a faulty pit stop, came off of Graham Rahall's car and just absolutely smacked the nose of your car. And you never really got the balance back. Soldiered on to finish 13th. Does the Indianapolis Motor Speedway owe Conor Daly one?
Oh, gosh, I certainly hope so. I mean, if it wasn't me catching on fire before the race even started in 2015, it's definitely added up after this race last year. Now, I mean, if I didn't have any luck there at all, any of it has been bad. So I hope that we can finally have a race where just we don't encounter anything like that. You know what I mean? I think last year was such an incredible opportunity to have a shot at winning, the greatest race in the world. And for me, it built a lot of confidence inside my soul as well, which is cool. And now I can't wait to go back there, because it's amazing to think how much, 363 days of the year, 364 days of the year, you work towards, having a shot on that race day, but everything has to go right. And everything almost went right, but it didn't. So, we got to lead the right ones next time. And if we get ourselves to the front, I think we can stay there. And if we have the similar car to last year, we're definitely going to stay there. So it's a good experience to have now running up front, and just want to be able to use it next year.
Well, listen, I appreciate your visiting with us. By the way, we have not spoken since you moved into the big 3-0. But then again, when you look at what's happened since you celebrated your 30th birthday, with the news of Bitnile coming on board and a full-time ride at ECR, I guess for Conor Daly, life begins at 30, my man.
It's true. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's definitely, it's definitely gone okay so far. Apparently, people that say 30 is really when you start living, I believe them. I love the 30s so far.
There you go. Grab it, hold on to it, embrace it, and squeeze it. Conor Daly, congratulations, and more so, continued success in the 2022 campaign. And we wish you nothing but the very best as you continue to persevere, but more importantly, pursue your dream. Thanks so much for visiting.
Thank you.